In 2019, I went into the bush of Botswana for 6 months to do something I had thought about doing for a very long time. Chasing that boyhood dream. When you want to do anything in Africa, you need a car, especially if you are doing a very special photo project involving wildlife. This particular project also involved a lot of waiting and patience, so I wanted to do it without any distractions, i.e. by myself. Long story short, I ended up with a second-hand, possibly third, fourth or fifth-hand Toyota Prado imported from Japan. If that's good or bad, I don't know, but that's what I ended up with, my very own car in Africa. It could almost fit me stretched out in the back, which was perfect should an emergency occur. And there were quite a few emergencies during this trip. The car stopped again. The car stopped again for no reason. The car has broken down. Come on, come on, come on! We shall get back to those later in the series. Make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to stay updated. Anyways, for this first episode, a test drive will suffice. And it was quite a long one, driving miles on end on the A3 road from Maun towards a town called Nata. The good thing about driving in Botswana is that there aren't many roads, so you won't really get lost that easy. And I was on the lookout for a sign to Kubu Island that was supposed to be around 10 kilometers from Nata. They told me bush signs aren't that well kept, so I'd have to be alert to find the right exit to get to Kubu. And they were right. I drove past the sign on first attempt, but eventually found it and drove south into the bush towards Makgadigadi Pans and Kubu Island. What I said about roads and getting lost earlier? That is true until you start driving in the bush on the roads there. Okay, now I don't see any roads anymore. Because there was a part where I couldn't see any roads or tracks, so now I think I'm a little bit lost. Kubu isn't the hardest place to find. Not good. Not good. But if you're a first-timer in the bush and by yourself, driving 90 kilometers more or less in a straight line in a dry bush veld on what they call roads, it can seem a bit dodgy. Well, you don't say. Driving on unpaved road. At least that arrow thing is pointing in the right direction, so that's a good sign for now. Eventually I found Kubu. This place is weird in the best possible way. Kubu is basically a granite island with a high concentration of Baobab trees right in the middle of the Makgadigadi Pans, one of the world's largest salt flats. The mission here was to explore the island. It isn't a lot to see apart from the landscape and the baobab trees here. No wildlife to speak of, only the dry heat and vast open plains. The mornings and afternoons I spent doing my time lapses. It is now 6:06 in the morning. And I think I have a good composition right here with the sun behind these trees, rising behind these trees. Got my 2 cameras set up just because I want to make sure. During the day I didn't do much apart from the odd drive on the flats around the island itself. Odd to think about that tens and thousands of years ago, this was one big lake, bigger than the country of Switzerland. On this first long trip with the car, I also quickly discovered that a tent was needed. The idea of sleeping in the back of the car turned out to be a bad idea. Not very comfortable, but if the adventure is really comfortable, is it really an adventure? I spent 3 days at Kubu before going further south, crossing Makgadigadi to get to Orapa and good old asphalt roads. Despite all this bush driving, that must have been hard on the suspension and everything else on the car. I wasn't worried at all at that point. I kept thinking to myself that if it could take this amount of beating, it could take anything. Happily unaware of future troubles. Kubu Island is a good place to visit. If you want to see the weird and wonderful nature. It is quite a stretch to get to, but well worth it. In my nearly 10 years of traveling to Botswana and Africa, this was my first time, and it made me wonder why I hadn't visited before. The car made it through on the other end of the Makgadigadi, and it had passed the first big test. I felt confident about the coming months by myself in the bush, and that my lion photo project would be a success, despite not having seen a single lion during the first week. In the next episode, instead of going back to Maun, the adventure bug had its grip on me. So I took a left at Orapa and headed down to Kama Rhino Sanctuary. I wanted to see rhinos. If there is one place in Botswana with almost a guarantee to see rhinos, it is Kama Rhino Sanctuary. There was also a nerve-wracking close encounter with a huge white rhino bull.
It's one of the dominant bulls, so which means there might be some females nearby.